I'd like to introduce Mike and Michelle Hardy to you. Michelle looks after Mike, who has motor neuron disease, and what I want to do today is to talk to Michelle and Mike about what it means to have motor neuron disease and what it's like for Michelle to look after Mike with motor neuron disease. The first question I want to ask you is, how do you cope?
Well, it's a very difficult question, because I think as time goes on you cope in different ways. In the obviously at first, when Mike was first diagnosed, I think we both found it difficult to cope and didn't sleep, and you wonder what the future's going to hold, and things that you might think, like wheelchairs, stair lifts, someone dying, all those things, all those thoughts are going through your mind, and you're wondering how you're going to cope, and spending a lot of time and energy trying to cope with that. But I think in the end that both of us realised that in some ways, while we were worrying about something that hadn't actually happened at that time, so I think we took both of us took the opportunity to sort of say, right, okay, let's just go with it one day at a time and try and think ahead in what we might need, but at the same time try and live our lives as normally as we could. So we've always tried to still go out to social things, have the family round and do all those things, obviously within the limits of, as Mike's got worse, so it's got more difficult to do things. There's people's houses you can't go to because we can't get in and that sort of thing. But I think on the whole we try and just make the best of what we've got. I mean, and I must admit, when I was started looking after Mike full-time caring him, it was going very hard, and we were quite lucky in that we got continuing health care, and now we have carers come in twice a day to get him up and do the showering and things. But I suppose we've tried to keep our relationship as normal as we can, and I think that helps. So we still argue, we still have differences of opinion over even over Mike's illness, and that's something that sort of that's the hardest thing to cope with, I think, really, was that learning to sort of, it's his illness and not mine. I don't really know what it feels like to have it, and therefore I've got to sort of accept that some of the things that he wants wouldn't necessarily be the treatments or things that I would choose, or that more often with Mike it's what he's refusing that I think I would have, the treatments he would have. But I think on the whole we cope by just trying to keep life as normal as possible.
Michelle, you have a lot of equipment for Mike, don't you? Because when Mike first was diagnosed with motor neuron, you could walk, you could talk, you could do most things, you could drive, yeah? And you could take part in life. So now you have a shed load of equipment and a fancy chair here which moves Mike around with his speech iPad here. How much stuff have you got that you have to deal with?
Well, quite a lot. But I think the thing is that all the equipment is almost quite scary when you think of it before you need it. But obviously when it comes, when you need it, you're actually glad to see it arrive. And we have got a lot of equipment. Obviously we've got the wheelchair, we've got a profiling bed which has got a special mattress. Mike's got a gastronomy, so we have the pumps and things that go with giving him fluids. We've got a suction machine, a cough assist machine, and Mike's just starting to use an NIV machine, hoping that might make his energy levels increase. We've got a wheelchair accessible vehicle, a mini lift, an overhead hoist, a through floor lift which allows Mike to go up and downstairs, which meant we didn't have to move home. I mean, that was another big thing that a lot of people have to do with motor neuron disease, is to move home. And I particularly didn't want to have to do that. And so the through-floor lift was the compromise there, because Mike was quite keen to move into a bungalow.
I'm going to ask some questions to Mike now, and Mike is going to reply on his iPad. He's prepared the reply in advance, and Michelle and Mike and I have we've come up with 3 different questions which I'm going to ask Mike. And the first one is, Mike, how do you come to terms with your deteriorating condition?
The key is to accept your diagnosis. Once you accept your illness, you can start to move forward. Unlike cancer, you can't fight MND, as there is no cure, but you can ameliorate the accompanying symptoms. It is hard to come to terms with life when your body is refusing to function, but your mind is unaffected. People can go 2 ways. Some focus on what they can't do, but eventually most people adopt the philosophy of their glass being half full, not half empty. Those who are living with MND seem to cope best when they accept the help that is on offer. It is not a case of surrendering to the disease, but mentally accepting that other agencies can make life easier and more bearable. Personally, I am very good at being useless and thank my upbringing for preparing me to cope. My family and my traditional grammar schooling focused on not making a fuss and not disturbing others, and I think this has stood me in good stead.
The next question that I want to ask Mike is, what has helped you most to cope?
The disease deteriorates inexorably. So my condition in response to my deterioration has had to evolve in line with my failing powers. At any one time, the items that have helped me cope have changed. For example, when I was getting about, I graduated from stick rollator to self-propelled wheelchair to power wheelchair. Harking back to my previous answer, it is dependent on your state of mind. I have learned over the years to never say never, as I have changed my mind often. One constant support has been my family. I know now why I had 4 children. They and my wife have been unstinting in their help and have encouraged me, accepting that I need to proceed at my own pace. Other significant support has come from the local Macmillan unit, who provide multidisciplinary support. I cannot underestimate the impact of gaining access to continuing healthcare, under which a package of tailored care is funded directly by the NHS and allows me to have up to 4 visits from carers a day and respite for my wife when she wants to go on holiday. Practically, in my case, it has meant 2 visits a day from 2 carers each time to get me up, shower me and put me to bed. Unfortunately, there is something of a postcode lottery in interpreting the criteria, and it can be a struggle in many areas to gain access to the NHS funds, leaving massive unreasonable strain on families.
The third question I want to ask Mike is, how do you feel about you getting worse while others around you go on as normal?
It was hard to adapt emotionally at first, but I had self-diagnosed long before the experts made up their minds. Consequently, we had done our initial grieving before diagnosis, and it was something of a relief when they said I had a slow variation of MND. I was expecting a life expectancy of 3 years, but I'm still grumbling on after 11 years, but it is a blessing and a curse. These days my emotional state is governed by my drug regime because I have dreadful emotional ability. I giggle all the time, sometimes inappropriately, and need antidepressants to modify my moods. It has limited success, but I'm always happy and never sad. I need to address this answer on 2 levels. I have known many good friends with MND who have died, and it was hard to see them deteriorate. So I have no illusions about my future, albeit everyone with MND has a unique story to tell. No 2 people develop the same way. The other level is how my friends react. Some cannot bear to see me and make no effort to communicate with me, but talk directly over my head in a true case of does he take sugar? Again, harking back to previous answers, it is all in the head. Some find it hard to comprehend how disabled I am and would prefer not to know that I need help in all the most undignified tasks like going to the toilet, but others are empathetic and realize if I can bear it, they should accept it.
Michelle, I know that you and Mike have got a do not resuscitate order. How did you and Mike decide that? How did you approach it? How did you decide it? And what does it mean for you?
Well, I don't have a DNR, Mike does. I think Mike decided he was going to have it, and then it was a case of me learning to accept that that was what he wanted, because initially it's upsetting, because obviously you don't want to lose somebody and you don't want them to perhaps lose their life before you think it's time, and it was difficult to explain to the children. They were quite shocked that they didn't, if he had a heart attack, he wouldn't want to be resuscitated, especially in the early days when he was still able to walk and things like that. But I think you have to learn to appreciate that it's the person's wishes and not your wishes. It's what they want and what they require in their life and how they manage their illness. And you have to accept. I think there's a lot of accepting to be done in that respect, in lots of aspects actually, where, you know, initially when Mike was saying he didn't want the NIV, and he would say to me, well, would you have it? And I would say, well, yes, I would if it made me feel better. But then, would I if I had motor neuron disease? I don't know.
What's an NIV?
It's the non-invasive ventilation.
Okay.
So we're just trying it out now.
That's the mask that goes
Yes.
over Mike's face at night.
Yes.
Yeah.
But, and of course, I think that's the thing you have to bear in mind, is that I live with MND as Mike does, but in a different perspective. So if I actually had motor neuron disease myself, I might be making those same choices, even though I don't think I would at this moment in time, because I don't have it. I think a lot of that you have to accept that it's what the person living with the disease wants and not what you personally think is best. But really, isn't it?
And Mike, can you play what you've got on your DNR?
I have strict views on how I want to go. I don't want to dwindle down like this, and if I have a stroke or heart attack, I do not want to be resuscitated, as life is hard already.
Yeah, Mike also has what they call an advanced directive, which has other wishes on it. And although I was involved in some of the initial ones, in the most recent years, I haven't. When you've changed it, I haven't been there because I just found those quite difficult to bear. Those things when you're talking about, you know, what you want when you're dying, really. So, but that's where the Macmillan unit comes in very well, because they now know, they know Mike and they know what he wants, and I'm trusting them that when the time comes, that almost they'll make the decision rather than us having to make the decision on what Mike's given.
Yes. But you seem to be able to talk together about it in a... what have you put here?
Instructions on the terminal care I want to have.
Yeah. While you're writing that out, I remember one of the first things that Mike said, which made me aware of the person in the wheelchair, is that you're an ex-deputy headmaster and you have a running dialogue and commentary going on in your head all the time, and your body is deteriorating slowly but very significantly, and you have a mind that still works very well. You must...
Frustrating.
Yes. And you are sitting in your chair and working out how you are going to die. How is it that you're going to do this thing? And the two of you together.
I mean, we don't, I must admit, we don't talk about it very much because I don't really like to think about it, and I think, again, that's one of those things where almost deal with it when it happens. You know, don't dwell on it too much at the moment. So the times when we do talk about it are probably, you know, once or twice a year maybe. We don't talk about it a lot.
I can see why you don't talk about it a lot. You know, because you actually, it's in the air, you both acknowledge it, but you actually got to get on, haven't you? You've got the bath to have, or the shower, and you've got...
My views have evolved. I have articulated general principles, but the fine detail changes month by month.
Does your condition deteriorate month by month?
It tends to plateau, but any illness affects me badly, and I never seem to recover lost ground.
It never improves. I would say sometimes we do go along where things don't seem, you know, to have got any worse, but it does never improve. That's the only thing. And obviously with the stiffening of the muscles, it's difficult to see until it gets to the stage where it's very difficult to move them, or they go into spasm or something like that. And so it's not something that you notice, but people who don't see Mike for a few months always feel that he's got worse when they do see him. Nobody's ever said he looks as if he's getting better.
I am conscious of not being more of a fuss than I need be. If I started to complain, I would never stop.
Do you get angry, Mike?
I know what you're going to say.
I think I know too.
Not with an ND, but still with Michelle.
Okay, Michelle, your turn. Do you get angry?
Yes, I do. I think a lot of it comes from frustration though, because it's very difficult. Mike will get frustrated because when he's trying to talk, I don't understand what he's saying. And of course, I'm trying very hard to understand what he's saying. He'll get frustrated because I'm not understanding. I'll get frustrated because I'm not understanding. And therefore, you end up sort of being cross with one another, but it's not really that, it's the condition.
But we are still nice to each other. My philosophy can be summed up in the words of St. John Lennon. Life is what happens to you when you are busy making other plans.